Assalamu alaikum and hi everyone. In this video, I would like to talk about how to write your chapter 1, either in your proposal or for your thesis. Your chapter 1 is very important. In this chapter, you have to make it clear how your research questions, methodology, and theoretical framework are tied up. How are they related to each other? Your research questions, your methodology, and your theoretical framework should be in line. Okay, in this chapter, there are several subsections. For example, introduction, background of the study, statement of the problem, research objectives, research questions, scope of the study, significance of the study, theoretical framework, conceptual framework, definition of terms, or in other words, operational definition, and lastly, summary. If you are doing a qualitative study, it is not a must for you to have conceptual framework. Otherwise, it is expected for you to have all these sections. First, let's go to this introduction. In this section, you have to introduce your study. This section is like an overview of your study, what your study is all about. How to write this section? To write this section, you have to find the keywords or key terms that you can find in your title or your research questions. So make sure you explain and discuss all the key terms found in your title and your research questions. For example, these are the research questions from Razwan's study. There are 4 research questions. The ones in red are the key terms or keywords of his study. For example, linguistic features, advertising discourse, smartphones, print advertisements, visual elements, social identities, and visual features. So in writing the introduction, Razwan has to make sure he includes all these key terms in the introduction. How to write an introduction? It is, you have to start from the very general, very broad, and narrow down to specific and towards your study. For example, it is like having the upside down pyramid or upside down triangle. To start with something broad in general and move on to specific, okay, specifically to your study. For example, in Razwan's case, he has to start with the smartphones because his study is about smartphones. From the smartphones, he has to move to the print advertisements. Okay, and that the readers will know, oh, he's studying something about advertisements of smartphones. And then he moves to the discourse of advertisement, advertising discourse, and followed by linguistic features. Linguistic features shape the discourse. And then visual elements. Visual elements also shape the discourse. And lastly, to social identities. So in the end, Razwan has to show how all these are connected with the purpose of his study. So the purpose of his study is to look at the smartphone print advertisements, how the smartphone producers use the advertisements to portray social identities. For example, if you are a fan of Oppo smartphones, you must be someone who loves taking photographs. So this is the social identity portrayed by the Oppo smartphone company. Okay, so each smartphone company has determined the social identity that they want to portray with their product. Okay, next, we move on to background of the study and statement of the problem. Okay, in the background of the study, you have to discuss or highlight the previous studies that are relevant to your study. For example, in Razwan's case, he needs to highlight the previous studies of print advertisement or the discourse of print advertisements, studies on smartphone, studies on social identity. Okay? So we have to show what people have done. Okay? From there, we need to identify or highlight the gaps. Okay? From the gaps, then you write the statement of the problem. So these are the issues or problems that have not been investigated. So these are the things that you include in your statement of the problem. Okay, statement of the problem is the section where you discuss and elaborate your issues or your problems. Where to get your issues and problems? Where do they come from? They come from your research questions. Make sure you discuss all the issues and problems that you have in your research questions in this section. Okay, for example, these are 3 research questions from Hamid's study. In his study, he has several key terms. For example, the ones in red: textual strategies, IS, Facebook, visual strategies, and ideologies. So in the background, Hamid has to highlight the previous studies done on textual strategies, on IS, on Facebook, on visual strategies, and ideologies. So he has to show what people have done on all these key terms, on all these areas. Okay, at the same time, he has to show what people have not done. So what people have not done is that people have not studied the textual strategies and visual strategies used by IS organization in portraying their organization and portraying their ideologies on Facebook. You see, people have done studies on Facebook. People have done study on textual strategies. People have done the study on visual strategies. People have done the study on IS. But people have not done the study on how IS use the textual strategies and visual strategies in portraying their ideologies on Facebook. Okay, that is the gap. Okay, that is how he came out with the research questions. Okay, your research objectives and your research questions are the heart of your thesis. Research objectives and research questions should be parallel. Okay, how to construct your research questions? Your research questions should be clear and focused. Simple question. Okay, avoid ambiguity. Make sure that your research questions are clear, and they should be researchable, something that you can do, and feasible. Feasible, what do I mean by feasible? It is easy, simple. You have to think about how to collect your data and how to analyze your data. Sometimes you have good research, but difficult for you to collect your data. Avoid this. You only have three years, so you don't have ample time to collect your data. Okay? Make sure it is easy for you to collect your data and it is easy for you to analyze your data. Okay, your research questions should be specific, not too broad and not too narrow. Not too broad, which I mean, it is not focused. It can be on anything. You cannot do that. And not too narrow, because if it is too narrow, it is not deep enough. It is not in-depth. So it is not of the PhD worthy. Make sure your research questions are complex, not too simple. For example, you cannot have like yes or no question. If I say, can blended learning help students to learn language? So the answer is yes or no. So avoid this kind of question. It is too simple. And avoid a descriptive question. For example, what are the reasons for children to hate vegetables? So you just list the reasons. So it is not analytical enough. So come up with a research question which is good, that will help you to be critical, that you have to do research for you in order for you to get the findings. For example, what are the perceptions of children towards green? How do children perceive vegetables? So therefore, you need to be more critical and analytical in order to answer the question. And last but not least, make sure your research questions are relevant to the area of your study. The next section is on the scope of the study. In the scope of the study, you start mentioning the purpose of the study. Okay, where to get the purpose of your study? It comes from your research objectives. Do not restate your research objectives. Instead, rephrase your research objectives to show the purpose of your study. And then write down or state the theories that underpin your study. All the theories that you need in your study. And lastly, the methodology. For example, in terms of how you're going to collect the data, who your respondents are, how would you analyze your data. Okay? So for the methodology, important for you to state the data collection, your respondents, and your analytical framework. So scope of your study is like your research perimeter, the boundary of your research. The next section is the easiest one, that is the significance of the study. So in this section, you state the parties or agencies that will benefit from your study. So who will benefit from your study? I found that students do not have difficulty in writing this section. Okay, the next section, which is very important, that is theoretical framework. In the theoretical framework, list all the theories that underpin your study. You need to have at least 2 theories. It should be more than 1 theory and at least 2 theories. And show how these theories are connected, are related in your study. So the theories should be related to your research question, should be in line with your literature review, in line with methodology. So your findings are determined by the theories that you use. What is this? This is burger. What does burger have to do with writing chapter 1? Okay, let's say if I have the buns, I put the buns separately, and I have the burger or the beef separately, and the salad not together, onions and cheese. Will you call it a burger? They are not a burger. They will not be a burger. They become a burger when you put them together. Just like a thesis. If you have your methodology separately, different theories, different literature review, and then I do not know what will be your findings. You will not have a thesis then. Okay, a conceptual framework. As I mentioned earlier, if you are doing a qualitative study, it is not a must for you to have a conceptual framework. Why? Because a conceptual framework is a framework that shows how the variables are connected to each other. So you have independent and dependent variables. So if you are doing a quantitative study, it is a must for you to have a conceptual framework. A conceptual framework is in the form of a diagram to show the relationship between the key concepts or the variables, okay, how they play a role in your study. For example, this is an example of a conceptual framework. Meaning making of tourism promotional videos. This is the conceptual, the concept of this study, the finding of this study. Okay? So in order to get the concept of the meaning making of tourism promotional videos, there are two concepts used: language of tourism and visual images of tourism. Okay? By combining these two concepts, we will have the third concept, that is text-image relationships of tourism discourse. So all these three concepts are part of the findings for this study, meaning making of tourism promotional videos. What does it mean? It means here, in order for you to understand the tourism promotional videos, you need to understand the language used, you need to understand the visual images used, and you need to understand the relationships between the language and the image. Okay? I give you another example. So this is another conceptual framework. In this study, the researcher tries to see what is the narrative structure of the short story. Not only a short story, but Malay short stories. So this is the finding, narrative structure of Malay short stories. So in order to get this, in order to get the findings, the researcher used two theories. One is narrative structure, and another theory is SFL, Systemic Functional Linguistics. Using these two theories, and then the researcher formed the narrative structure of Malay short stories. So that is the concept of this study. Okay. Last, definition of terms. How to identify the terms. How to determine what terms to define. So in order to do that, you have to look at your title, your research questions, your theoretical and conceptual frameworks. Look at what are the key terms. So make sure you define all these terms. Define the terms based on your literature review. Okay, not only that, you also have to include operational definition for each term. What do they mean in your study? Okay, last, don't forget to end each chapter with a summary. Thank you for watching. Bye.